Hi, I'm Dr. Shyam Ranganathan. This is a yoga philosophy video, and so our topic today is Yoga Sutra Book 2. How does one practice yoga? Okay, so this is a this is the second installment of a four-part series, right? And so in this series, I'm going over the Yoga Sutra. Each video covers one book of the Yoga Sutra, and it gives you a little taste of what my students wrestle with and investigate in a longer extended philosophical course on the Yoga Sutra. Okay, so in book 1, we learn or we investigate and we come to appreciate that we are all agents distinct from our experiences. Okay, and so when we live poorly, we treat our experiences, our mind, as though it's some kind of ultimate barrier to the possibilities of choice. But when we are practicing yoga, we take responsibility for our relationship with the contents of our mind, and this just happens to be the contents of the external world. Okay, and so what we're trying to do is transform our life into one that's characterized not by external pressure, but from responsibility. And this is why devotion to Ishvara is central, because Ishvara is the ideal of being a person, right? It's about being unconservative, untouched by past choices, and also affliction. So not only are you free from the past, but also free to move into a future that's receptive to you. Okay, and so we are thereby people who can leave a past of trouble behind as we move into a future that is receptive to us. All right, so in book 2, the shift focuses from the basic theoretical framework that we get in book 1 to a practical framework. And here, Patanjali teaches us that yoga is a practice. So the title of book 2 is the sadhana pada, and sadhana means practice. Okay, and so in the first line of book 2, Yoga Sutra, we learn what the practice of yoga consists in, and it consists in 3 practical ideals or kriyas. Okay, the first is tapas. I translated this as penance in the past, but really it means something like unconservatism, going against the grain, producing friction. Literally, tapas means heat. So when you're engaging in tapas, you're doing something to create heat, and that involves pushing against boundaries. Okay, then the second is swadhyaya, which literally means self-study, but to study something on the yoga account is to control your relationship with it. So to study yourself is to control yourself. So it's self-governance. And then there's devotion to the Lord Ishvara that we learned about in book 1. But notice what he's done. He's taken the 2 central features of Ishvara, that it's untouched by past choices and it's also kind of free from affliction, and made these into 2 separate practices, right? To be untouched by past choices is to push against barriers that are holding you back, and to be free as someone who goes into the future is to govern yourself and operate according to your own self-determination. All right. And then, okay, after having set out yoga as this 3-part practice, he sets out 5 of the famous 8 limbs of yoga in book 2. Okay, and the limbs are as follows. There's first yama. Okay, and so the yama rules first start with ahimsa, or non-harm. And then after non-harm, you come to the truth, right? The truth that's left over after you haven't destroyed things. And that's a truth of personal boundaries. And the personal boundaries are cashed out in terms of brahmacharya, having the appropriate personal sexual boundaries with others, asteya, not taking what other people require, but also aparigraha, not encumbering ourselves by hoarding. Okay, so yama, you start out being non-harmful, and then you get to these facts of personal boundaries. Then you have the niyamas. The niyamas are the 3 practices of yoga that he's already covered, plus purity. And purity means that you adopted a disposition against non-yogic things, right? So you are against harm, you are against identifying with your mental experiences, but also contentment, right? You have to be content with your practice of yoga, otherwise you're not going to continue. So you need to be both against what's anti-yoga and also be happy with yoga. Then there's asana. So these days asana is used as a word for postural movements, but in the Yoga Sutra it's pretty clear it seems mostly to mean sitting, and in fact traditionally asana meant sitting or being still. Now he does describe it as a case of active relaxation, and those are two important features of asana, but it seemed to be a far more kind of still activity than what we usually associate with asana these days. Then there's pranayama. That's literally breathing exercises and focusing on the breath. And he describes that as a discarding of the inner and the outer, right? An important feature of breath is that it teaches you that the lines or the boundaries between the internal world and the external world are fluid, right? And so whereas originally when we're not yogic, we treat the external world as a kind of barrier to our possibilities, when we focus on breath, we learn that these barriers are fluid, and in a way we can't live with real barriers around us because we would suffocate. So in learning how to breathe or doing it on purpose, right, we're really kind of grounding ourselves in a public world where we are very much interacting with it. And then the fifth limb is pratyahara, or preparing for concentration, and literally it means withdrawing the senses. Right. And, I used to think this is a kind of mysterious thing until I started noticing how whenever you were involved in some type of philosophical activity, right, you're not getting distracted by your experiences. And even when you're engaged within movement, right, and you're doing things, you're withdrawing your senses from all sorts of things in your environment, right? Imagine running and trying to sense everything as you go along. You'd end up, getting stuck on a tree or a leaf or the pavement. That activity of active movement involves withdrawing your senses from the things that you're experiencing. And it's a vital part of developing your own critical ability, but also your engagement in the world that you once kind of treated as a boundary to the external world. Thank you so much for watching this video. As usual, I'm excited to learn what you thought about this, so please leave a comment below. Thank you.